Welcome to Let's Listen Sports. I'm your host, Wayne Partello, and this week's guest has been a team president on the team side and led sports marketing for both Anheuser-Busch and Verizon. And in those roles, were part of some of the biggest activations ever. And after all that, he decided to step away and start his own company. And there is so much to get into with Nick Kelly. We go all the way back to when we met, when he was doing deals with the Padres for Budweiser, all the way through today when he stepped away to start his own company. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Nick Kelly. All right, so this is fun because you were a guy that I knew from a distance, but through the pandemic, I ended up started working with a bunch of people who were really close to you, and your name was always out there and whatever. And then you quit your job and start your own company, and I'm like, I got to talk to this guy. This is unbelievable. Nick Kelly, thank you so much for taking the time.
I appreciate you having me, Wade.
Yeah, I'm excited. So I don't know if this is true or not, but I'm going to give you the credit. You tell me if it's full of shit or what. Okay. But I always say that when I was on the team side and, when I worked in radio, I was a big Anheuser-Busch promotions guy, right? I did a ton of Bud promos and whatever. Fast forward to get in the team, Budweiser was the king of the signs. They had signs everywhere. And I remember at the Padres, we were one of the first teams to take down that big old Budweiser sign came down. And I give you credit for that. That was your tenure with Anheuser-Busch, right?
Yeah. I mean, when I first started on the sports team at AB, Budweiser and Bud Light didn't have a brand awareness problem. And those signs were expensive, like millions of dollars to produce, use union labor to erect it and everything else. And we didn't spend less in sports. We just spent it differently. And I think the biggest way it was when I say cost savings and to reinvest within somebody like the Padres was, hey, I need a bunch more social programming and I need a bunch more digital, and I'm not going to pay you more, but I'll give you back this real estate that you can go sell to somebody else because this is no longer important. Look, it's tough, right? For years, you could look at, even now, I watch the MLB Network every morning, and they'll run old games and you'll see old big Budweiser signs and outfield wall signs. And it was iconic, but nobody doesn't know who Budweiser is anymore. So the purpose that they serve is great for emerging brands or local brands. But for us, we had to change it up. And it was tough. There's a lot of people that take pride in hey, this sign has been here for 30 years, 40 years. And, the toughest one for me wasn't even our choice. My roommate, our daughter, the toughest one for me wasn't even our choice. It was, we lost the Red Sox deal. And that sign at the Red Sox had been up for almost 80 years. Yeah. And for us to it cost us a lot to remove the sign, but then we ended up shipping it to Belgium, and it's at the Belgium headquarters there because it's a historic monument for us. I mean, it sat outside Fenway for 80 years. So it was just a change in strategy, but it's tough.
Well, because I saw there was an article last week that came out, and this is why I was excited to have you on. Now it came out and it was the death of signs because Kraft Heinz is pulling out of, all their sports signage. No, they don't have an awareness problem. That's an awareness, a tactic. And there are brands that need that for sure. And it's really powerful, but there are brands that you've worked on some big ones that, they needed a little bit of a different approach. And I loved it, man.
Yeah, man. Look, we've got clients now at Encore that are emerging brands. They need that. They're probably they're not buying the same assets of an established, well-known brand. They're buying visibility. They want to be connected to the team. So they always serve that purpose. They're not going anywhere. But the more recognized the brand is, Nike doesn't need an outfield wall sign,
Right.
Coat don't. It's just, and if they do, it's part of a local player or something like that. But when you see the new emerging categories the gaming industry, the poly markets, all those, they need that awareness. So they're buying them up left and right.
Yeah. We just, at Cuento, we work with Ballast Point, and I was harping on this because we just launched a City Connect branded beer with Ballast Point. So it's called the Super Lager. And the way I was explaining it to people, you put a new product on the shelf, even under an existing brand with a Budweiser label next to it, getting someone to recognize it is really tough. That's where you have to spend a lot of money to get that brand awareness of instant recognition of like, hey, that's new. I should try that. And the money, but by putting a City Connect where the Padres are going to, and MLB and Nike are going to spend a ton of money making that logo very recognizable very quickly. And then it's on a beer shelf. I bought, by doing that deal, you're buying that instant credibility. That's a different tactic. Like we wanted to come up with a new product. We're going to buy association and instant credibility. That's a different, like they're all used for different things. And I loved when you guys did that because
Yeah, look, and it's that example too, like, especially in the alcohol space, these sports deals are so valuable for trial. Like, you go to a grocery store or a C store and you see that City Connect can, it's just like like at least attempt to buy it is like there because of the brand association. But the likelihood that you had a 16-ounce version at the Padres game, like, and you tried it once, like that trial opportunity at the baseball game, football game, whatever, that's where the most value, especially for emerging brands. Like when you look at spirits or craft brands or just like the RTD space, when those guys have a chance to like for the first time they had a Surfside or the first time they had it, typically like they had it at one of these games. And I think that leads to it's the same model that you used to have when you go to a bar and you have a drink for the first time. This is just a big bar. So
and when you have it at a game, it starts to connect some other memory tissue to it, right? It was a special moment, and the special moment was attached to this brand, and it starts to do things that you can't, you even just at a bar, you can't get that magic feeling of like, oh, I was in this amazing space having this awesome time with these great people, and I had that, and it just feels as a different feeling. So
well, the other part about it too is you see like all these brands, even in the alcohol space, but even other brands creating these destinations in the ballparks because they want people sharing a picture. All of them have some goofy ass like monument or something to take a picture in front of because you want them to show they showed up at the Budweiser space, Crooked Tea, whatever it is, their space, and they're taking pictures and they're sharing that with their friends, and they probably had your product in hand, like that's where a lot of that moved, especially in the alcohol space, because everybody wanted to be like more of a destination that they hung out at, not just a sign.
yeah. I mean, when we were doing the early days of Petco back when we were working with you guys doing that stuff, we were literally building strategies just to get people to share their experiences, like create magical moments and then remind them that they should share it. Like we literally put up signs like, hey, this is a great photo op, like share it, use this hashtag so we can track you sharing it. And it was because we needed people to drive that FOMO of like, whoa, Nick's at the Padres game tonight. That's incredible. And those moments. And I used to joke, I'm like, imagine 30 years ago walking into a boardroom and saying that you could get free reach just by encouraging the people who are already enjoying your product to tell their friends that they love it. All you had to do was encourage it and like showcase it, and it'll just magically spread. You're like, no, it's not magic. You put all this thing, into place, but those moments, I mean, we did some programs with you guys back in the day where, I mean, hidden nightclubs in the ballpark where
One of the best activations we ever did. I mean, like the way you guys did it was kind of like a pop up of on the team app. Keep me honest here, but like on the team app, it was when we were doing like the Bud Light Up for Whatever stuff, and it was like we had a pop up club in the ballpark, and it was like a janitorial closet, and it turned it into a club, and we had 100 people in there, and they were all drinking Bud Light and hanging out, and like it was something you wouldn't expect, which is obviously what the campaign was with Bud Light, and man, it was just like you guys at least this is wow, it was like 2018, 2019, like we're just ahead of the curve of like we can do so much more than just like what's on the rate card.
And my favorite part of the whole thing was produce the content in the moment and get it on the video board, because we had the new video board. It was like, and then showcase, hey, you never know what's going to happen in this park. There was a nightclub here tonight. You didn't even know it. Most of you are sitting in the seats, but there's 150 people in a nightclub over there, and look at it. And the people are like, and like, random fans were getting this alert to just go to this closet, knock on a door, but again, it was listening to what the partner needs, right? And it was like, hey, we've got this campaign. What could you do? And the sponsorship team did an amazing job. Our job was just to bring it to life. So, I mean, we could do this all day. I want your journey in career. I mean, we crossed paths on the Anheuser-Busch days, but take us through sort of how you got to that point and then where we've gone from there.
Yeah, like I started when I was younger. I was doing PR, like straight out of college. I worked at like more of a very grassroots PR agencies, doing everything from like coal miners to electricity and petroleum. And then I always wanted to get into sports. And I
Sure.
give a lot of credit to, John Schwartz and Brett Jukes, who had kind of reformed the way they're doing communications at NASCAR. So
Okay.
truly got into sports in NASCAR in my late 20s. And then from there, was doing business comms and still in the PR role. Got recruited to go to Anheuser-Busch in St. Louis to do PR for Bud Light, which, at the 29 years
Awesome.
old, is like a dream job. So got into PR at Bud Light. It was a wild year. We had a bunch of like, ups and downs, and it was fun. But, the biggest part is I gained a lot of credibility internally just for strategy, keeping calm when crazy situations, things like
Yep.
that. When they decided they were going to reorg the sports marketing division, because I'd worked at NASCAR, they just assumed I was like a sports expert. And they were just like, you want to, and it wasn't like be on the team. It was like, do you want to lead the sports division? And I was like, sure. Like, that sounds great.
That's
So I did.
unbelievable.
Yeah, and I mean, and at the time we were, I mean, they probably still have the biggest portfolio in sports. So we were
Right.
there, every league, every team, and nobody knew who I was. So like it was like, and the good part was I had a boss at the time, this guy named Elko Vandernal, who like he worked at AB InBev Global, so he came
Okay.
to North America to kind of like be my boss for. We had music division, we had food, sports, everything. So like I wasn't on an island, so that
Right.
helped. But, the big part is like I was meeting everybody for the first time. We probably were their biggest partner or one of their biggest partners. And I would say the first 2 or 3 years like was very much just listening to wholesalers, teams, what are we doing good, what are we doing bad? And I wouldn't say I felt good about where we were going as like a department until about my third year,
Yeah.
because it just took that long. We're such a big organization to like get alignment on a strategy, get alignment on where we want to go, build the trust of the teams we're working with, that like we're
Yeah.
not crazy. But yeah, after that, man, I was just like my role grew there over time. I ended up having like 800 employees, and I was running everything from like I ran the Clydesdales, licensing, with a Hollywood office for a while, the zoo. Like we just had like it was just a little bit of a hodgepodge of stuff.
Yeah.
I got recruited to go be the president of Charlotte FC. It was an expansion MLS team. So like I always wanted to be on the team side.
Okay.
And the expansion process was so fun, like because like
Yeah.
employee, 2 or 3, and we built the whole team. We turned into about 80 people on the business side.
And what year was that? Because that was around the
One,
pandemic, right?
yeah,
Oh,
right. It was like the second year of the pandemic.
yeah, okay. I remember. I
Yeah,
remember being like, that's, coming out of this and launching a team, that's gonna be amazing.
yeah. So it was one of those things that like, so we did go in there. We had 1 year, so I started in February of 21, and we launched in February of 22. So like the week after I got there, we launched ticket sales for season tickets.
Yes.
We basically tried to build the franchise during COVID, and which sucks, right? Like you're trying to do like fan events and fan rallies, like
Yeah.
safe distancing and everything else. But look, I wouldn't say we were the poster child for, how to build a franchise because during COVID, because we very young, but we was just like, you got to be in 5 days and you got to be here because like, we weren't going to be willing to like, we're going to be able to build this club like remotely. So
Yeah.
we interviewed hundreds of people over the process, and it was like, so what's your work from home? I'm like, there isn't one. And like, we basically from day one were 5 days a week, which, brought its challenges, right? Because we had a sister team in the Panthers, and
Yep.
like they were work from home, don't come in
Oh,
because of, yeah.
wow.
And
Yeah,
so
culturally, yep.
culturally, it was way different. But I mean, it worked out great. We had a great culture, great team of people. Like a lot of those people have left. Like our head of marketing is now the president of the MLS team in Houston and NWSL team in Houston. Another guy's the president of MLS Next team. The other guy was, he's the assistant AD at Maryland. So that we recruited well and we
Yeah.
retained talent. But our whole thought process was like, if you do a really good job here for a year or two and you start a franchise and you set all these numbers and records, you're going to be very marketable to get
Yep.
a better job somewhere else, which is kind of like backwards from like any way any normal company works. Is like nobody wants to lose people, but we basically sold them on the idea that if you come here and do a great job, we want to lose you. We
Yep.
want you to go get other, take these best practices, go other places. So did that, was there for about a year and a half. And then, I wanted to start an agency, and I talked to a lot of people, and they were like, "Look, you're just a beer guy, like, so you gotta have some other experience." And I like, which was fair. I'm glad I got that feedback at the time.
Yeah.
So ended up going to Verizon, and I'm glad I did because it was way different. Like the business back portion is something that I wasn't, very used
Interesting.
to. And it was also just you're dealing with different partners. Our biggest partners were Apple, Google, Amazon. So like just learning that landscape on the content side.
Yeah.
And then, you're doing deals that are same size as AB, but they're way more complicated because
Right.
you're selling in infrastructure, you're selling in, mobile plans. And then it's just
Yeah.
like you're trying to pass through with like nobody loves their phone carrier. So like what is the value you're bringing back to your customers? So I'm glad I did it. But then, year two, we ended up doing this gigantic Super Bowl festival where it was like we took over 30 stadiums on
I
Super Bowl.
remember this. Yeah.
It was great. I mean, a couple 100,000 people. Like it was a really big lift. And, I just remember being at Super Bowl and being like, it's kind of like, what else am I going to do? Like, so it became more of like having conversations with a lot of our leadership team and then some outside people. Like, and it's funny, I was talking to a guy and he was just like, well, if we're having this conversation, you already checked out. And it was just, can you see that, right? So like, work to make sure I left that in a place in a good place and
Yeah.
started. And I haven't looked back, man. It's everything I thought it would be, but there's so much more that's just like challenging that you didn't even expect. And I've been very surprised by like just like the continued relationships that I have that like, that I can't do anything for them. They can't do anything for me right now. And it's just like, is it just catching up and doing all that stuff? Like that's been the most like surprising part.
Yeah, and you control your calendar, right? So there's no other pressure on it. So if you wanna take that time to catch up with somebody that really probably doesn't have a benefit or, a financial benefit to your company at all, but you're like, "Damn, I haven't caught up with so and so in a while." And, I know when you and I caught up and I was a few years ahead of you on this, like, quitting the job and similar, right? Like, what else am I gonna do here? Like I've done it. Like once you launch a uniform set, Petco is already the number one ballpark in America. All these things, you're like, okay, now what? And all the power of controlling your own calendar, but also, the people who show up out of nowhere, right? It's that call you did 3 years ago. Somebody's at a new job and they're like,
Yeah.
"Dude, we need you," And I mean, I just had one 2 weeks ago. Guy I worked with in Miami in a new place. He was just like, "Hey, I just had this thing pop up. Any chance you could jump in and help us?" Like, "Yeah, let's go. That'd be fun." And like, I love that stuff.
I've been really fortunate too. Exact same situation where like literally yesterday, 2 days ago was like our 1 year anniversary.
Yeah.
And literally like until last week, we hadn't built a credentials deck because like it all been inbound recommendations from like day one.
Yep.
I used to work with either at AB or Verizon and that were just like, hey, can you help us out? So like it's a good problem to have, but like it also goes back to you talking about calendar. Man, like though I was joking with some friends that are still at Verizon, and it was just like, what's the best part? It's like I don't have all these internal meetings that are just like checkups or status or
Yep.
whatever, like that, is for somebody else, and it's not driving any value, and just they want to be in the know. So like every meeting that's on your calendar is either important or you chose to have it. It's not like you're forced into it. So like the amount of time that like frees up, like you feel is more productive than because you're not
100%.
dealing with all the bureaucracy and everything else.
I tell everybody I spent a lot of my time putting out man-made fires,
Yeah.
and now nobody's paying a consultant to sit around to put out a fire they started. You are being brought in for real problems, real like, "Hey, man, I need a solution to this." Nobody's like, "Hey, let's throw a meeting on the calendar with Nick because he's free to hang out with." It's like, "No, we're paying him to be on the call. It better be really useful."
Well, and the best part too, like the thing I've had the most fun with, which was kind of like our thesis when we started, was like we've got a client now, big Fortune 100 company, and they wanted to sell in a new property platform, everything. And half of the battle was this like, all right, tell me who matters in your organization.
Sure.
And it was basically the stakeholder mapping of like, all right, you need to present to this person first, then this person, this person, this person. So by the time you take it to the CMO and the CEO, like you've got allies and you're not just showing up to the firing squad because they didn't know what was going on. And like they ended up selling it in. It was awesome. And it's like it's a big investment for them. But like that's the part that I thought I was good at on the internally was like stakeholder building. Like when I was at Verizon, like, you're going to get a big, FIFA deal. Man, I did every C-level executive got a pre-read from me for 30 minutes of like, here's what it is, here's how we're gonna pay for it, everything else. And then we brought it to the board. And then so like at that point, all of our C-level had seen it.
Yep.
And so they could support it and do that. It took 2 months just to get all those meetings set up. And like that's the type of stuff that like I love of like helping. Like if you have a great idea and you're like a head of partnerships or a head of marketing for whatever, I love trying to help you sell internally. Like,
Yep.
I hate selling our agency. I love trying to sell your ideas internally. That's the most fun part for me.
Yeah, and a lot of folks don't know that game.
Yep.
Especially as you're coming up the ranks, you just don't have a lot of exposure to it. I mean, I always felt my job at the C level was to protect my staff from that. Was like, "Hey, I want you to keep doing what you're doing. I'll deal with all the other stuff and free you up so that you guys can create." And, one of my like little mantras that I use now is like, I want to create an environment where creatives can create because if their mind gets sucked into that world and it's just over. And so, yeah, the same thing. I love that. And yeah, getting everybody on the same page. I mean, one of the things that we've really unearthed is the power of alignment.
Yeah.
And, when we started, our thesis was around brand and story. And one thing we found out is in the journey of building this thing is that people feel that's soft and like, yeah, that's nice to have, but whatever. But when we broke it down to the problem, if you don't have it, is misalignment, which is
Right.
costing you money. And people were like, "Oh, yeah, no, we totally have that." Like, "Oh, wait, that fixes this?" I'm like, "Yes, 100%." And it changes people's, like, mindset to be like, "Oh, yeah, we're totally not aligned." But to your point, you spent 2 months driving alignment before
Yeah.
you shifted the gear to try to sell the thing. That's the
Yeah.
game.
I think that people just like they don't understand the importance too of like, you know, marketing and sports marketing as a whole for I'd say 90% of like all the sponsors is not a necessity. Like they don't have to have it to drive their business. So you're always defending the investment you're making. So if you're asking for more, you better have a really clear reason why and what the ROI is and how you're going to leverage it. That's so important. And I just think so many people just don't understand that.
And I feel like so many marketers don't take the time to do the work to understand how that's gonna affect your head of sales. If you're out running this program over here and it's counterintuitive to what their budgets are and what they've gotta hit, I mean, we go back to the example of the Anheuser-Busch, right? They're going, "Hey, we're on the chopping block." Like, that sign's coming down. This guy, Nick Kelly's new, and he's telling us, right? If you don't come up with good programs, you might not get the same amount of money. You could get cut in half. You could be off their teams are going to come off of our roster. And it's up to you to be the best ideas. And that's when, okay, well, let me reframe how we're going to do our show so that I could build a window that we could showcase him differently because the sign's coming down versus going, I don't care what you have to do for this Nick Kelly guy. I got a show to produce, pound sand. You're like, no, let's help each other. And by the way, make a great show. I mean, when a nightclub pops up on your video board, everybody's like, this is a wild place, man.
Well, and the hard part was for us, right? Like we were strategic. Even when I was at AB, like we ended up moving to incentive-based contracts for teams because like the backstory was is like it helped us drive a lot of like year-to-year change. So if we had a new social campaign or we had something else we wanted to do, like at retail, it provided the flexibility or mandated the flexibility from the teams to be good partners. But
Yep.
they were all, I say 90% of them were good partners anyway. I think that the hard part was is that it also more protected us against you won the World Series. Great. Here's your bonus today. Don't call me next year when we're up for renewal because I already paid you for that. And then
Right.
it also protected us on the way of like we would tie it to attendance, and attendance was typically dictated by wins and losses. Like the numbers would fall through the floor in August and September if a team wasn't
Sure.
competing. So it also protected us of like you would actually get paid a little bit less if you weren't competing at a high level. And for us, we weren't selling the right amount of product because there's less people in
Right.
the ballpark and everything else. And but when we did that, it was important for us to get big teams on first. And like, not to pick on the Rays, but like if the Rays took the deal, the Yankees don't care. Like,
Right.
but like if I can get the Yankees to take it, like I think our first teams we had were the Yankees, we had NASCAR on it, we had the Dolphins on it, we had the Saints, and then I think the NBA team we had on it was the Wizards. And so like we had teams that were I would call in the top half, if not higher, of like like respect for each of the leagues. to ensure that we were in a position that like, hey, when we say we're rolling this out and they start calling around, it's just going to be like, yeah, of course the Rays took it. No, the Yankees took it. So
Right.
like it's just like, so if the Yankees take it, who are have no reason to because they're the Yankees, then everybody's going to take it. So it became even every time we had a big ask or a big change, we always made sure we had the right alignment from 5 or 6 other partners to make sure we're not crazy.
I mean, the power of that is, we talked about internal alignment, but here's external alignment that like if I know and by the way, that's the secret sauce to driving business forward is like figuring out what pieces you need to put in place first so that the train goes right down the track and everybody falls in line and you understand kind of the metrics. And I think that was one of the secret things that you guys did really well. And in each stop, I mean, it's pretty amazing to be able to pull off what you guys pulled off on the Verizon side. The all the different sites, all the different activations for all of that to come together into one giant program. I mean, not many have ever pulled something off at that scale.
Yeah, it took time, right? Like, 'cause when I was at AB, we started like partner summits, and we would bring everybody in and talk about here's what we're doing. There's a method to the madness. We're not crazy. And then we did the same thing at Verizon, but like the other part is like we treated everybody equally. So like what we did was is that I think we had like 24 NFL teams like when we tried to do that. So like, but everybody got paid the same to activate. Everybody was like, it wasn't like we were trying to nickel dime markets of like New York's more, this one's less. It's like you all get the same. Your ask is the same. It's all gonna be slightly different. And I think because of that, like, we always, I mean, we had teams. I mean, the Jaguars are probably one of the best partners I've ever worked with.
Yeah.
And the Jaguars aren't on anybody's like high list of like, I need them. But like, we would defend them of like, if there were cuts in budgets or whatever, like I'll keep them over a lot of other people because they just do. I mean, they would bend over backwards. They were awesome partners. And I think it's just because a lot of it came because we didn't treat them like the Jaguars. We treated them like everybody else.
Yeah. And great partners are great partners. Doesn't matter what the logo is. The people that you're dealing with are the ones that are really setting the relationship, that are putting in the extra work, doing the extra, it's the extras. And, I know when you guys would do those partner summits, you would award teams of the year. You would celebrate the ones that went above and beyond so that everybody in the room goes. And I know sitting on the team side, that was really valuable. We're sitting in the room of our peers and our partners are judging whether we're doing what's right all the time and rewarding us for that. I love that. I love that you guys did that, and I thought it really did make a difference.
Yeah, I think the one thing that helped too is that like when teams did good work, a good example is like early on, the Broncos did a content shoot for our Up for Whatever stuff, and we had TV commercials that were. This is the good part about working at home now.
I
Um,
love it.
we had we had TV commercials that weren't testing well, and so what we did was is we actually took the content that the Broncos made for us and made it a national TV commercial. We didn't shoot it. Like we literally just took their
Wow.
social and digital content and for like 6 weeks, like towards the end of the season, we just ran this Broncos Up for Whatever activation they did. And it gave us some credibility with a lot of the teams that like, we're not just asking you this because to be an asshole. Like we're doing it because like it's driving value for us. And so it probably set a bad precedent a little bit because like every team thought, oh, well, they'll make us a national TV commercial. That wasn't the case, but like
Sure.
it was that good that it was just like this is better than what we got right now. So we're gonna go put it out. And I think that just built credibility through that process.
Yeah, one of my partners we worked with was like, "Listen, we're a show don't tell kind of brand. Like, we're not even gonna." I love that line. Like, we're we're gonna we're gonna show people what we're all like. We can tell you, we're gonna tell you once or twice, but we're not gonna keep. We're just gonna then we're gonna start showing you what we're all
Yeah.
about, and that's gonna build you so much more credibility. And the sponsorship partnership world is so small that the person you deal with, and for you jumping over, from Budweiser to the team side back to Verizon, and now doing your own thing and building your own company, we're dealing with the same people. It's the same small universe.
Yeah, look, and there's nobody that I've ever dealt with that I'm afraid to call because, like,
Right.
if anything, we've always been honest, transparent, like, and I think that that's the biggest piece about this because, like, far too times you hear these horror stories of just like, oh, I was promised this and then they backed out, or like the way that they handled this wasn't, above board. So it's always been important for me, long term to be like,
Of course.
honest and transparent because like to your point, it is a very small world. And like it's just like the other part is like treating everybody equally. Like uh a lot of people as they get higher up become very hierarchical. And it's just like even when I was president of Charlotte FC or a head at Verizon or AD, if you send to me the account executive as the person to present the presentation, great. Like if that's who you want to send, like I'm not the person who's like, why isn't Wayne here? Why isn't Sergio doing it? I don't care. Like for us, it's just that like we treated everybody who showed up in that door with whatever jersey or shirt that you represent, like, and it could be an account coordinator all the way up to the president or owner. And I think that that's not always reciprocated by brands
No.
because it's just like they want like a level to level type of conversation. Well, if your CRO's not coming, or SVP's not coming, or if your owner's not, it's like, guys, like at the end of the day, like besides this meeting, they're not that involved.
Yep.
So
Tell your best story. Put your best piece. If that's what you think is the best you got, then let them have it. I'm not gonna. I love that. I think that is. So let's jump over. So now you start your own thing. You took the leap that many think about, many dream about. Not many are crazy enough to do it. I say crazy because you got to have there's a little like total confidence in yourself, like, but you quickly turns to fear and you're, like all the things we've talked about, all the emotions that come along with it. The reason why I reached out, how this happened was it was your 1-year anniversary. I mean, I actually was driving my daughter to school. She just turned 16 and we talk business sometimes. And I'm like, yeah, I was just texting this guy, who's 1 year into his thing. And I'm like, that's a big moment, man. There's a lot of emotions. Talk to me. What was going through your mind 1 year in on this thing?
man, it's one of those things that like I don't know where I expected to be. Like I think that like, obviously the first 6 months I spent a lot of time talking to people like, what are you doing? Like, why would you leave this great job or this other stuff? And like it became one of those things like I'd always wanted to do it. Like I started
Sure.
when I was in my early 20s at an agency. I was like, I always thought I wanted to be that forever. Obviously, I had to do other things. The biggest thing for me though is like, we've got 6 people now. We've got 8 clients that, some of them are like Fortune 100 companies. And the fact that like we're further along than I thought I would be was probably the biggest shock. I think that it's a relief too. Like, we hadn't had to take on any money. Like we're making money, like those types of things that like I was the biggest fear of is like, am I ever going to be able to pay myself? Am I ever going to be in a position where like, cash flow is a problem? And like, those are the types of things that the first couple months, like I spent a lot of time planning, forecasting, and like we exceeded everywhere I thought it would be. So like all of the doomsday, the first 6 months, kind of I didn't have to worry about, but I worried about them a lot at the beginning. I think that the hard part is just that like, staying true to what we do. Like, we're very much brand only. Like, we don't work with teams, leagues, anything because we don't want this conflict of interest. And we've had a lot of outreach from teams and leagues and properties being like, hey, can you help us like, do like a sales 101 of like how you'd want to be pitched, or can you help us with the beer category, or can you help us with the answer is no. Like, and I think that that's, if we were harder up for money, we probably would have had to be in a position to do that.
Sure.
So being able to stay in that space has been probably the hardest piece. And then just the other part is like the one luxury is you can pick who you want to work with. Like we had a brand reach out, offer us a lot of, money on a retainer to cut a lot of deals. And it was just like, guys, I'm not going to come in and like hatchet all your deals up and because you don't want to do it. And I think that I'm sure there's a lot of agencies out there that would, but like, it becomes one of those situations like I'm not going to come in and be the sit man and then all this.
The hatchet man.
Yeah.
Nope.
And then because I asked like a couple simple questions like why are you cutting these deals? We just sold to a private equity group and they want us to cut it down. I'm like, okay, like when did all these deals expire? Oh, we just re-signed them all. I'm like,
Oh,
yeah, I was like, guys, I'm not coming in to like basically try and break up all these deals on your behalf that you just signed. So
no. I had a guy. We were doing this. We had this partner, and the guy we worked with on the day to day was just a great guy. And they merged, and they brought in some new guys. And I'm telling you, within the first 5 minutes of the first meeting, Katie and I looked across the table, and we both shook our heads, and we walked out. We literally, as we got to our car, we were like, we're done, and sent them a note. And I said to my guy, I'm like, hey, love you. You're the best. I didn't do this to deal with people like that. So cool. Wish you nothing but the best. I'll get you through. No. You only have to deal with me. No. He already has my number. He's already texted me. I get this feeling when I don't have that feeling about a person, when I see the text, and as soon as I get that feeling, we're done. because, and so 3 months later, I had coffee with that guy and he was like, took you 3 minutes, took me 3 months, but man, you were right. And he goes, and I want to tell you, and this guy's really successful. And he goes, this was just a business he had invested in, and he goes, my friend, I want to tell you the definition of success in my mind. I'm like, okay. He goes, walking away from the monthly retainer I was giving you just because you didn't want to deal with that person. He goes, congratulations, you've made it. I was like, you know what? That is a definition for, like, that's a moment where you get to say, nah, we've earned it. You've worked hard and you got to keep earning it because we got to pay everybody and all these things. But like that moment to say, no, it's not, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that person.
Yeah, and there is some freeness of saying no. I think it's also too like the one thing I'm horrible at is like I think I've taught myself out of business like 10 times this year, or it's just like or giving it away because it's turned into like there will be people we meet with like some brands and they'd be like, hey, I've got 3 properties and I want to do, more. I don't, my boss doesn't think I'm getting like, the right ROI. And it's like, man, you don't need an agency. Like, you just need like a plan on a page, like, walk through, here's what we have, here's how it works, here's how we're changing it. And it was just like, and for me, it just becomes more along the lines of like, I don't want to be in the trying to defend what you're paying me on a retainer every month or sit and stare at each other once a week to basically come up with stuff. So like, we would just, especially if they're like referred to us by somebody or anything else, it would just be like, we'll help you out. Like we'll put you on the right track because we want you to be successful. And like if you grow, call us. But like here to manage 3 of your properties that like you can do by yourself.
Yep. I had a literally sat, and one of the things I've had to learn was my inherent nature to want to help people got us into some deals that we should have never taken. And they were too low. They couldn't afford us. I knew it. And you're just like, gosh, why? And I said no multiple times, but that feeling took over to be like, I want to help. I just want to help. And it wasn't the right deal. It wasn't the right deal for them. It wasn't the right deal for us. And all for the right reasons. But you end up learning that, like, and Katie and I, as my partner, which is, I need that in my life. I need that kind of bounce off. And she was like, hey, we learned it was for the right reasons, and it is what it is.
Yeah, and I think that's we've been fortunate that we don't have any clients currently that like are a problem. Like the one depends on the day. But like we've been very selective on that. Like I will say that like probably the most disappointing part 1 year in is like we participated in probably 3 RFPs, and like man, they're a grind. They're a necessity. I understand on the brand side why they do it, and all 3 of them we've been in like the final 2 or 3. And every time we've lost, it's been like, well, you guys aren't quite big enough. I'm like, did you not know that when we started this process? Like, we were very transparent on the upfront. And so like, clearly we're good enough to get to that point. And it's just like where we are today. Like if we were doing some of those RFPs today, to be able to point to this client that's like a Fortune 50, this client's a Fortune 50, to be like, if we're big enough for them, we certainly are big enough for you. And it's just like, we didn't really have, and I don't know that I had the confidence to be that kind of asshole to be like, don't make, because it's also, you're putting them in a tough spot of saying like, that's a cop out or an excuse. But look, nobody gets fired for hiring one of the big agencies, like, because, if you hired a big agency and they work with all these other big brands, like, and it doesn't work there, it's on them. It's not on you. But like, if you hire somebody like us and it doesn't work out, why didn't you go with one of these big ones? And so like, I completely understand that model.
Every time somebody hires me, I know they've taken a risk.
Yeah.
And the risk has diminished as we're now 6 years old, and we've worked, once we got, big league deals, the risk went away. And more teams were like, whoa, now they can walk us in and go, oh, they work with the league and they do, all those things. So I get it. But at the early days, there are some folks that took a risk with a logo they'd never heard of, walking into an owner with an invoice going, I just trust these people. And some of those have been our partners for 4 or 5 years. And I know that took a risk. And it is you're right. You get in these rooms and I will tell you, you're going to win an RFP and it's going to be an amazing thing. And I in the last little bit to that confidence, I in year 1, I would have never had the balls to pull off this move, but I went up against the big dogs in a pitch. And I have to tell you, because I was like, I'm not going to win this anyway. So whatever. And I wiped my deck clean and I went black slides, white text. And I just went up with every objection that I knew why the big guys would say not to hire me. And I just put them up. And the next slide was my answer to it. And we just went one by one and I won and I got the business. And I was like, it was just like, but to your point, as the years go on and you're like, now you're year one, you're like, I'm going to just take that swing now because what do I have to lose?
Well, that's the case, right? And like the big piece for us is that we're in a position where we really want to go out there and like never say anything negative about anybody. Like
Right.
it's just that like highlight our attributes, why you
That's
want to
it.
work with us, but never say anything negative. It's like I would, if I were sitting on the side of the table and somebody was saying negative about other competitors, like it would be so off putting to begin with. I think that the thing that I not don't struggle with, but still frustrates me is that like they have no problem doing it. Like the bigger agencies, because like look, I mean, even when like when I was at both AD and Verizon, we usually had a portfolio of agencies because our portfolio was so big.
Sure.
And they would sit there every day and be like, "Oh, well, we were running golf, or if we were running baseball, like you know, it's just like guys, like you got your lane, you got the business,
That's it.
like don't worry about it." And but the way that they would just all badmouth each other, where it's just like there's a lot of things I learned working with. I probably worked with a dozen of the biggest agencies, a lot of consolidated now, and it's just like I took a lot of good from that, but I also like wrote down. I have a laundry list of shit I never want to do because it's just like there's and now I understand why they were doing some of these things, especially on the financial side. Like
Right.
they've got headcount, they've got everything else. They want to be able to protect that. But just like the cattiness back and forth
Yeah.
of like, oh, we could have done Super Bowl better. It's like, all right, guys, like
I I always tell like I love when they bring others in. So like our model is a little different because we're not an agency. So we offer some of the services, but we sit beside them and we're like, listen, we want you in the sandbox. More creative brains, the better. Like, listen, and so yeah, we just kind of go about it in a different manner. And I'm like you. This world is so small and it says a lot about you in the room if you're going negative towards others versus just positive to yourself. Like, hey, I'm going to show you all the reasons why you probably think you don't need me. But let
yeah,
me tell you, and this is just me telling you about me and my team and all the things that we can do. And they can tell you all the things they can do, and you see what's the fit, and that's okay either way. And
yeah,
we won our first RFP, and we've gone through the slog, and it was a that was a different pitch, but, the process for people who've never been through it, it's brutal, man. It is the writing on the front end is heavy, and then you've gotta submit, and, for ours, we went up against 50 agencies, and then the 50 got boiled down to a top 5, and you get your shot to get in the room, and you're in the what people don't realize is the emotional attachment you get to this work because 'cause you're pouring it all in for free.
yeah.
Like, you're giving them everything you got. Like, you want the deal.
Well, and I think that was I think the hardest part, especially as we grow, is I don't think I have a hard time bringing credibility to like I can do this. I think that what we've had to continue to do is hire senior people who also have similar resumes to me, because in doing that, like you have people who are as equally qualified as I am, and maybe specifically in your industry, to where like a lot of the questions that I get all the time are like, well, how much time of yours do I get? And I'm like, and that the honest answer is like probably way more than you should, because it's just like at the size we're at now, like
That's
I care
exactly
so
right.
much about the work itself that like I'm all over it. It's like as we grow, that may not be the case, but like that's also where the hiring part comes in, because like I have to have an honest answer. Like I'm not gonna be like, because like that was the one thing that used to drive me crazy when I was on the brand side. You'd get the A team come in and pitch, and then I'd get the C team on my day to day, and it was just like, by the way, still have a tremendous amount of respect for the A team, but like they're the sales team and they're the owners of the agency or the presidents or whatever. And it's just
Yep.
like, of course they're selling it, but like I'm never seeing you again. And like, so it's just like that became that is part of our pitch. But like, I think that those bigger agencies have a lot of value in the fact that like they have resources spread out everywhere.
Yep.
So like it is a different approach,
It's a
but
different business. It's
yeah,
a different business, and, that's that and by the way, like a smaller shop like ours, we don't carry the overhead of that. So, you're paying it's a different amount, but you're getting access to folks, and we dealt with the same thing, and, now at 19 full-time people at our place, we've hired senior level people too, and you're going, I instantly wanna show you those folks because they're gonna be working on your day to day, and I'm involved, and they're gonna bring me in, and, when they need me for stuff, I'm there, and the that's the way the model works, but I want you to know it's not just Wayne and Katie Cuento anymore. Like our big jump this year was like telling our team, I don't want this to just be about us anymore. It can't be. We're paying all of you guys to be great. Like, let's tell the world how great you are too, because Nick's awesome. But
Yeah.
Nick's brought on all these people and he brought them in because he trusts them. Like there's
Yeah.
that association.
There's a piece of this, right, that like I really envied the way, and they still do it now, like how CA used to operate, in the fact that like you rarely saw a job posted, you didn't know who they worked with, and it was just like they were very behind the scenes, very influential, and like like, and that's on more on the brand side, consulting side. Like they had big partners you never even knew who they worked with, and like, and the same thing is like a lot of the talent they got was either referrals, people they know, stuff like that, and they built up through trust. And it's just like, we're trying to emulate a lot of stuff those guys do, because like
Yeah.
how they've done it is just like it's never about them. It's always
Yep.
about their clients. And
Yep.
like there's something about that I appreciate. Like I sound like the biggest asshole ever, because like as we've got like a million SBJ awards around here of like about, but it became more of like what used to kind of drive me nuts is like, there would be all these agencies who would want to enter all these awards for the work they did and stuff. And by the way, we want them to. That's why you do the great work. But then, oftentimes like all their case studies, everything else were always us and promoting that. And again, go crazy. But even now, when we built out this credentials deck for like, when we're talking to like new clients, like we don't even list our clients. Like, cause it's like,
Right.
the thing is like, we'll show you the relevant work to what you're asking for. But at the same time, it's just like, you know, you, you asked us for an assignment or to pitch you on something. We brought you a solution and everything else. And like, if you need to call the CMO of this company or this company to like call for a character, go crazy, go
Yep.
call them.
Yep.
But it's like, we don't want it to be like we're the only reason that that brand's successful. And that's sometimes how the message
Sure.
comes across, which is just like, were it not for us, they'd be had their head up their ass. It's like, all right, guys, like that's not how this works.
All right. I gotta ask you the core of this podcast. We've been going for 45 minutes, just you and I just doing what we do. I love it. Is one lesson from sports that you take that you apply to your daily life that is made you either happy or successful, that you're like, that's it, man. That's something I could take from the world of sports to my business.
Yeah, so I've been friends with guy used to be former GM or president of National, Mike Rizzo, for like 20 years. And when I first got into NASCAR, like I got promoted after like my first year and all this other stuff, and he was just like, he kind of sat me down and was just like, you just got congratulations, but it was just more along the lines of like, as you work your way up in the industry, like make sure that like you don't step in on anybody to get to the top. Like you got to be very smart and very, respectful of everybody, because it's like the chances of you seeing him on the way down from the top is highly likely. And it's just like, and I think that it's what's so frustrating to me sometimes, and I'd say it's less so in our industry than maybe others, is like, man, you see, a guy who's been, the account coordinator, then he works his way up to director, and now he's like the CRO or the CMO. And the way that he now is too important to, deal with you and everything else. And it's like, man, I was there when you were like, running around with me doing like, all the things that we asked you to do.
Yup.
And we never treated you that way. And like, I've seen so many situations too, where like my favorite used to be when I was at AB is that like, they'd be like, well, do you have the authority to do this? And then they would like call our president, and he'd be like, at the time, he didn't want to do anything with it. He'd be like, talk to Nick. I don't give a shit. And it became humbling to them to be like, I wasn't like I mean, I was young, I was like 31, but I wasn't some
Yeah.
kid like speaking out of turn. And it became more of like a thing like of they expected that they couldn't negotiate with me because I wasn't the president of Anheuser-Busch or I wasn't whatever. And like just the way that they treated me was just kind of with the level of different disrespect that like when I went back to Verizon and like everybody treated me like shit at AD, like I remember like, so like,
Yup.
I'm not doing a deal with you because like the way you treated me here, like it's by the way, like if that's the type of person you are, then we don't want to be partners with you. And like it travels, man. Like there's some people in this industry
Woo.
that like I'd say 99% are great. Like they're all good
Agreed.
people, awesome people. But then every once in a while you just run into somebody who like whose title just gets to their head and they're just like, they won't take a phone call, or just the way they treat their own people. Like it was just like I saw so many situations, especially look, and when you work for a beer company, a lot of the events you're doing around alcohol stuff, and like this is the way that you see like people just like, treat their people,
Mhm.
like it's just like, man, like so I just, for me, like I was always like we talked about earlier, like I'll talk to anybody. We respect everybody on your team because if they were good enough for you to hire them, then
That's
like
it.
we'll work with them all equally. And on the same thing, like even when I was like president at Charlotte FC, like, there was nothing beneath me. Like I would do everything that was out there from, you needed me to work concessions, we work concessions. And like this other
Right.
people, that's just not the case.
Yeah, I love that, and I couldn't agree more. I think there are unfortunately that 1%, and by the way, most of us who've done well in our careers are problem solvers. And
Yeah.
so you naturally get drawn to that more than anything. Meanwhile, 99% are like the greatest people. And you just like, I love going to MLB All Star. It's like one of my favorite events of the
Yeah.
year. It's like, I call it like our summer camp. Like you get there and you get to see all these folks you haven't seen in a year. And you're just like the bonds that you have of just, the getting it done together. And to your point, in the trenches and all the things, it's great, dude. That's a really good one. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Um,
man.
last thing, what's the best part of your day now?
Taking my daughter and picking her up from school. Like, I think that when I was on the corporate side, like you didn't run your own schedule. So like there
Yeah.
was never a world that I could like do that. So that's been awesome. And then even too, like it is the schedule. Like it's truly like your clients dictate where you need to be. Like I'm in Talladega 2 weeks ago. Like I'm in St. Louis next week. Like you still have that part of it, but like the days you can control it is the most rewarding because like you can choose like I can go do this PowerPoint I need to do after bed because I needed to go take the time to go to school, go do this. Like that's been the biggest like, blessing and like surprise of like how much I enjoy that.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. 1 year in the books, and that is no easy task as someone who knows. And congrats, man. It takes the cojones to take the leap and to go do what you've dreamt of doing for probably a really long time and making it a reality. And 1 year anniversary is a big one. So congrats on everything.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.